All right, Act First Leader, we're going to be talking about increasing your show rates. All right, so the percentage likelihood that a call that is booked on your calendar actually shows for their appointment. All right, the very first bullet point is very true. Okay, this module is extremely crucial and honestly, it's vastly underrated. And the reason I know it's vastly underrated is because anytime I post content about improving your show rate, it doesn't do very well. But when I post content about increasing your closing percentage or overcoming an objection, it always does well. So, what that tells me is people don't care as much about increasing their show rates. But if you want to be the best possible closer, if you want to be the top of your field, the top of your company, you got to care about all the moving parts of the sales funnel. And the show rate is extremely important because there's nothing worse than waking up and being like, damn, I got a full calendar today. I got a full calendar of calls, and then they cancel or they no show or they reschedule. And you're like, shit, there goes all my opportunity for the day. And it's especially worse, especially I know we're coming off of the prospecting module here. It's especially worse if you are responsible for prospecting and you put in the work to prospect that lead and they cancel and they no show, right? So at the end of the day, if we do not focus on improving our show rates, right, you're wasting time, you're wasting energy, and you're wasting your pipeline, which means if you don't have a lot of opportunity, how are you actually going to make money? How are you going to make this a sustainable career? So how do we fix this? Proper systems and proper messaging is going to dramatically increase show rate. Okay, so that's exactly what we're going to do, right? We're going to get into all the different keys of success to increasing your show rate. But before we do, I do just want to talk about what industry standard is. So what exactly is the KPI for this? All right, so if you work for a company that does a one call close, the industry standard is 60%. Well, that's my industry standard. Okay, I've been taught by a lot of my mentors that show rate industry standard is 50%, but I mean, I just couldn't swallow that pill, right? You're telling me that 50% of the calls I have on my calendar are going to show. I think that's horrible. So the standard that I set with all my previous companies and my current company is bare minimum 60%. If we drop below 60%, that means that, the show rate is in the red, and this is a problem that we now have to divert attention to. So 60% should be your bare minimum standard, but anything above that, you are absolutely dominating it. Okay, so what does that mean? If you have 10 calls on your books, that's 6 of those calls is going to show up. Now, for a 2 call close, right, there's more moving parts. You have the discovery call, you have the closing call, right? 60% is also the standard here. For your discovery call, 60% show. For your closing call, 60% show. Now, the discovery show, so specifically for the discovery call, that 10 to 15 minute prospecting call, show rates might be a little bit lower because you have less qualified leads, right? So you might put a less qualified lead on a discovery call to make sure they're a good lead. And if it's a less qualified lead or not as good of a lead, the likelihood of them showing is going to drop. So if your discovery call show rate is at like 50%, I would still say like that's okay, but 60% should be your gold standard. And then anything above that, you're playing with house money. Okay, so now we're going to get into the keys for success. All right, so these are the tips. My previous company, the Next Level Coaching Academy, we held a 68% show rate for 3 years in a row with cold leads, meaning we ran ads. We didn't have a big organic presence. We didn't have a following. These are people that literally just heard about us from an ad, and we had a 68% show rate. Okay, so these are the tips and tricks that really helped us. All right, so the first one here, it starts with lead quality. So lead quality as a high ticket closer, it's not directly in your control. Now, of course, you should be a source of feedback for the company. You should be communicating to the company about the lead quality and what you are seeing. If you are attracting the ideal avatar that the company wants, if you are not attracting the ideal avatar that the company wants, okay? But at the end of the day, lead quality is really important, okay? The organic content and the ads that the company you work for puts out need to call out qualified prospects. They need to attract qualified prospects, okay? And if they don't, it's going to affect your show rate. If you're bringing in unqualified prospects or prospects who are not directly the prospects you want to work with, guess what? They're going to show at a much less significant rate than those that are. So what you could do there, like I said, you could be the source of feedback. All right. it comes back to that notion of quality clients over quantity of clients. All right, now the next part of this process of getting people to show is the booking process. Now, not always in your control, right? I mean, if you are responsible for booking calls, then guess what? This is fully in your control. If you are not responsible for booking calls, this is not directly in your control, but since you'll be educated on it, then, obviously you can make sure that you are leading the team to make sure that this stuff is done. So let's break it down, okay? So when booking, you want to make sure that we get 100% confirmation. All right, we don't want any wishy-washy replies. So what that means is when you ask for their email and you ask for their phone number to book their appointment, right? We want to make sure that we get a 100%. So the way that we say that is if XYZ day in XYZ time 100% works for you, all I need is your phone number and email to book you in. Okay. So it's really important that when we're asking for their phone number and email, we throw this part in. If X day and X time 100% works, right? Not if day and time works, we got to throw in the 100%, right? Because then they read that and go, huh, does that time 100% work? It was kind of at like an 80%, but now that they said 100%, I'm going to say something, right? So that's what we want to say when we're asking for their phone number and email. Now, what we want to look out for is we want to look out for wishy-washy replies, okay? So if they respond back and they're like, that time might work, pencil me in, let's shoot for XYZ. Yeah, that should work. That time should be fine. I should be able to make that work. We do not want to accept that. Okay, we do not want to accept that, right? So the way that we would respond back to that is, hey, we only want to take calls that are going to 100% work. This way, I respect your time, you respect our time. Let's find a different time that is going to 100% work, right? And then you repitch new times to find times that work. Okay. So continuing on with the booking process here. Okay. Make sure you pitch times within the next day. All right. So this is the next key to success for show rate. Honestly, this is one of the most important ones. 24-hour turnaround time. All right. Bare minimum, we want to have 50% of the calls. So for the company, let's say they book 100 calls in a month. Okay. We would want at least 50 of those to have a 24-hour turnaround time, which is from the day of booking to the day of the call, it's 24-hour turnaround time or less. Okay. So this is absolutely mission critical, right? We've done, years and years of tracking this. And when our 24-hour turnaround time was at bare minimum 50%, our show rate was really, really high. So once again, if you're in a company meeting and you guys are talking about show rate, you have this education now. You could bring this up and say like, hey, do we track 24-hour turnaround time? Is that something we look into, right? And then you can tell them why that's important. Now, more directly, like as a closer, we can ensure success, like we talked about, by offering call slots consistently, right? If you only offer call slots on like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it's going to be impossible for you to get 24-hour turnaround time. So it's better to offer call slots consistently, days in the row, so that you have 24-hour turnaround time there. Okay, we're still talking about the booking process. As you can see, the booking process is imperative to making sure that calls show. All right, so this is the sequence that we want to follow. All right, we pitch the call, right? They agree. All right, we say, great. We only need 60 seconds more of your time to finalize the call booking. What time zone are you in? So this bullet point here does two things. We're pre-framing, so we're saying, hey, we only need 60 seconds more of your time, right? So now they know like, ah, shit, is this something I should handle later? Right. But when we say 60 more seconds, they'll be like, oh, I got 60 more seconds. Cool. I can finish this now. Right. So that's why that's important. Now, the second part of this is we ask for their time zone, right? Because once we get their time zone, we're only going to speak in their time zone moving forward. There's a lot of communication lapses because people don't understand time zones, so might as well just speak in theirs to make sure there's no lapse. All right, then we pitch 2 times within the next 24 hours in their time zone. Okay, we want to set ourselves up for success. We want that 24-hour turnaround time, so we pitch it 2 times in their time zone within 24 hours. All right. Once they pick a time, we say if that time 100% works, what is your phone number and email so I can book you in for a call? We get their phone number and email and we book in the call. All right. We do not send any calendar links. Okay. This is not something that you want to do. A lot of companies will just say, oh, just send the calendar link and let them pick a time. One, if you do that, now the process is not in your control. They might just say, oh, I'll do this later, and then they never come back to it. Or if they do go in the calendar, they might pick a time 2 weeks from now, or a week from now, or 3 days from now, which, which doesn't abide by our 24-hour turnaround time rule. Okay. Like I said, this may not be in your control, but it is good education to have. Okay. So the next key to success here is the pre-call process. Okay. Once booked, set the stage for the call and control the narrative. All right. So once we book the call, now we want to make sure that we set the stage and control the narrative. All right. So here's what that looks like. All right. This is the confirmation message at the point of booking. All right. Once booked, set the stage for the call and control the narrative. All right. So here's what it looks like. You're all booked for tomorrow at date, time, their time zone. Here is closer's name. So, this is where if it's you booking the call, you would say, here is my Zoom meeting link. But if the company is booking the call for you, they should say your name. They should be introducing you. They should make you known at this point. All right, so here's closer Zoom meeting link, as well as this is meant to say his or her. I'll go back and change that, as well as their phone number. All right, closer's name will be texting you prior to the consultation to confirm. So just want to make sure you have their phone number to know what to expect a text from. I also sent you a calendar invite. Can you please confirm you got that in your email you provided? Below, you will see the next steps. Okay, so it's really important to make sure that they got the confirmation. This way, we know if they got the confirmation, they're going to get all of the automated text and email reminders of the call, which we will cover in a later video. Okay. Now, we also want to make sure we're providing this information. So the phone number, the Zoom link, the meeting ID, and then we want to make sure we have some pre-call homework here, some next steps, okay? So step one, please fill out our pre-call form, okay? So this way our closer has all the best information to serve you, and we'll cover pre-call forms at the end of this module, all right? I would invite them to the free community. This way they're in the free community, right? They're learning more about your company. They're engaging with people. Maybe you have some clients in the free community that can hype them up. And then lastly, check out some testimonials. Okay. So I always put all my testimonials in a Google Drive, and I would just send them that Google Drive link so they can review those testimonials. All right, so continuing on with the pre-call process. All right, so the first thing we want to do is in the booking process, we want to set the stage, control the narrative with this message here. Okay, now the next thing we want to do is if the call is longer than 24 hours out, let's say we didn't successfully get 24-hour turnaround time, we want to make sure that we continue to build the connection and rapport via text up until the call. So this is you, the closer, right? So if you notice and you look on your calendar and you see you have somebody booked 48 hours out, 72 hours out, right? You want to reach out right at the point of booking, introduce yourself, and then create some dialogue over the next however amount of time it is until the call actually happens. Okay. Now we want to keep it tasteful, right? The dialogue, it could be about the free community, or it could be a resource you sent them. There also could be dialogue about their personal lives, like what are you doing this weekend? It could also be sending them testimonials and free resources, right? We just want to make sure we have some engagement. We don't want it to be obsessive. It doesn't need to be, you're talking to them, around the clock. Just keep it tasteful, right? Maybe a message here, a message there, right? And then the night before the call, we will officially confirm the time slot, okay? So this is really important for you as a closer. Okay, the next key to success to making sure our show rate is high is reschedules, all right? So in my previous companies, we would track, in my current company, we would track reschedule rate, all right? So reschedule rate is of the people that requested to reschedule, what percentage of them did we successfully get back on the books? All right, we want that number to be at minimum 50%. All right, at minimum, we want to have 50% of the calls that rescheduled, canceled, or no-showed back on the books. Okay, what we noticed is if our reschedule percentage was at 50%, our show rate would be really high. All right, now we'll cover this more specifically, but we do want to have a one call reschedule process. Like I said, we will discuss that more. But basically, what this does is it shows, we have a standard, right? It's so if a call does cancel or reschedule, we want to make it known that we have this reschedule policy. And that just shows like, hey, we have a standard. We take this seriously. If you're not going to take it seriously, then, more or less, we don't want you as a client. Okay. Other key to success here. This is another really important one as a closer, being detailed oriented. All right. Sometimes a call doesn't show because of our own error. Okay. We enter the wrong information into the calendar system. We enter the wrong information to the CRM, or we just, have a complete lapse of judgment and we miscalculate the time of the call. Right. And because of that, the person shows up on the Zoom. We're not on the Zoom and we're like, oh shit, yeah, we fucked up here, right? And that looks really bad on you as the professional, as the sales rep. It looks really bad on the company, right? So we want to make sure with all of these moving parts that we're patient and we slow down when we're booking the call. We slow down when we're writing notes in the CRM. We slow down when we look at our calendar, and we just want to make sure we have all of our I's dotted and our T's crossed. So being detail oriented is mission critical. All right. Another key to success is the way that we have our calendar set up. Now, I'm not going to go into this because we've already talked about it, but if you need a refresher, you can click this link here. But how you have your calendar set up will impact your show rates. All right, the next key to success here is having automated calendar text and email reminders. So we'll go into that in a separate video here, but let's break it down. So most calendar systems that you use, not most, it probably should say all calendar systems that you use have automated text and email reminders, okay? So since we also will be doing manual text confirmations, we don't want to abuse the automated reminders. All right. Like I said, we'll cover the breakdown of that more shortly. I will show you specifically like send a reminder 6 hours out and 1 hour out, right? Like I'll cover all that for you. All right. Now, aside from automated text and email reminders, we want to make sure the calendar events are named where the purpose of the event is clear. So you want to make sure on your calendar events they're named. So when the prospect sees it pop up on their calendar, they can connect the dots, right? If it just says 60-minute call, they're going to say, what the hell is that? Right? 60-minute call with Chad, they're going to be like, what the hell is that? Right? So an example would be like XYZ program consultation call, plan your 10K a month strategy. Right? So just making sure it's very clear. So when they see it, they know exactly what it is. All right. Yes, I'm sipping a double shot of espresso here. Let me bottoms up real quick. This cute little cup is from Kaylin's grandma who passed away, unfortunately. But it's a cute little cup. Okay, let's continue on. So light touches on social media. So as a closer, after the call is officially booked, meaning you see it on your calendar and you're like, all right, cool, I have a call tomorrow with Susie Q, right? I would try to find them on social media. So the CRM, where you guys are tracking all your leads, the company should have on there like the social media handle of the person you have the call with. But I personally would follow them on social media. This is why it's important for you to have some resemblance of a social media presence. It doesn't mean you need to have a lot of followers, but you should be posting on social media. It doesn't have to be sales content, right? Just post your life, post things about your life, make you a real human, right? And what that's going to do is when you do connect with a prospect and they come back and they look at your social media because you followed them, right? They're going to see the human side of you and they're not going to feel it's going to let their guard down a little bit, right? They're going to start trusting you if you have pictures of your family on there or pictures of your dog or you and your wife or you and your husband, whatever it is, right? So from there, I would engage with their social media leading up to the appointment. All right, this keeps you top of mind and builds connection. Now, we don't want to be over the top as that could kind of, hurt results, but we want to make it more tasteful, right? You send them a follow, maybe you like a couple of their posts, comment on a couple of their posts, but you're not going to go like all out, like obsessive, right? Just, keep it tasteful.